Welcome, everyone, to yet another episode of Big Chad and Friends. I am your host, the one and only Big Chad. And on my podcast, I interview artists, musicians, those who I think bring something creative, unique, and cool to the world, and give you a little insight to who they are and how they tick. And on today's episode, we have an amazingly talented guest, just a fantastic singer, and oddly enough and coolly enough, was a teacher of mine as well back in the day. So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, please welcome to the stage, Mary Jane Alm. Mary Jane, how are you?
I am fantastic and happy to see you, my friend.
Yeah, it's been a while. Well, there was McNally at the other school we taught at, but before that, it's definitely been a minute. So
Yep.
So I have to begin this interview here with a story, because this is when I knew you just had a heart of gold. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but I specifically remember this happening. So long story short, the reason I moved to Minnesota was to attend the Institute of Production and Recording, which is a school that teaches music production and audio engineering. And as part of that, a part of the curriculum, you actually have to take music theory courses, which I think is an absolute must. Regardless if you're a musician or not, if you're going the production engineering route, having a background in music is huge. But I had your class. It was the dead middle of the winter, and for those of you who don't know, Minnesota winters suck. They are they are snowy and cold and not super fun. But I'm kind of impervious to cold, so I show up to class even in the middle of winter in shorts and not a very thick sweatshirt. And I distinctly remember one day after class, I might have been on a break, you actually pulled me aside and you offered to buy me pants and a winter coat because you were worried about me. And I just thought, oh my God, that is the kindest, sweetest thing I've ever had a teacher do. Unbeknownst to you, that's just how I rolled. I'm just a shorts in the middle of winter guy.
No,
But
I totally remember that.
Awesome.
It's the mom in me. I can't help myself. So
Oh, so I love that. I was just like, oh, it felt like mom was looking over me. So I know my mom appreciated that because I told her the story. But I just knew at that point in time, I was like, all right, this is a great person here that I have teaching me and being a part. So I love that memory, and I love telling that story about you. So all right, so we're going to jump into my next segment here. I jokingly call first date questions, and I'm just going to hit you with some generic questions, and I just want you to throw the first thing to me that comes to your mind. So
Okay.
Ready for it?
Ready.
All right. Favorite food?
Salad, believe it or not. Any kind of salad.
I love a good salad, especially like a chicken Caesar. Like that.
Oh, yeah.
That's where I'm at, is the chicken.
Love that.
Yep. Favorite beverage?
Definitely red wine. Cabernet, to be more specific.
Okay. I'll have to share that with my parents. They are big wine fans. Actually, they're coming up this week, and I'm going to introduce them to some Minnesota wine. So hopefully, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Favorite toy as a kid?
Favorite toy as a kid? It would probably be not a toy, but I loved the piano. I started playing piano when I was like 3 or 4. My mother taught piano lessons, so all I wanted to do was play the piano. I don't even remember playing with toys. I'm sure I did.
Well, that segues to my next question. What was the first instrument you ever owned? And I think we just answered that with the piano.
Just answered it,
yes. Favorite TV show you are currently binge watching?
Well, I just finished Stranger Things, which I loved.
I've yet to watch that, and I'm being shamed by my friends for
my gosh, it's fantastic.
Okay.
And the last season is just the best. So
all right, Stranger Things. I'll have to check that one out. I love this question. If you were to be a dog, what breed of dog would you be?
Well, that's a really good question, because we have 2 beautiful dogs, and one of them is an Aussie Doodle. She's an Australian Shepherd Poodle mix, and she's like my spirit animal. And so, I think she's my girl, and I am in love with that dog. So I think I'd be an Aussie Doodle.
I had no idea that they were breeding Australian Shepherds with doodles. I knew they did like labs and retrievers, but
yeah. It's a little less common, and she's kind of crazy. I'm hoping she stays quiet for this whole
Oh,
interview. So,
my last interview, my guest had a bulldog that had no problem making its presence known by howling and whining. So I accept any and all dog participation. So it's okay.
okay.
What was the first album you ever owned?
It was a Monkees album.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. I was really into the Monkees.
Yeah, I think that might have been. I remember my mom was very much so like Beach Boys, Monkeys. So that was my introduction to music. Was riding in her Camaro
Nice.
back then, and hearing those tunes coming out the speakers. So yeah, okay, that's awesome. All right, last. Oh, favorite activity to do outside of music.
You know, I there's a lot of things I like to do. I guess I love my friends, and I love just hanging out with my girlfriends, and that's probably my favorite thing to do other than music.
No, yeah, I mean, there's something to be said. Obviously, there's activities and things, but if you're with good people, it can make grocery shopping fun for
It's
that.
like whatever it is, I don't even care.
Yeah.
I have two friends that we every morning we wordle together. We do all the wordles. We do wordle and quartle and setacordle and octordle and
Oh man.
square word. There's about, I don't know, 6 or 7 puzzles that we do, and we do it together and post our scores with each other. And some people post them on Facebook. We just post them to each other.
That's awesome. No, I love that. Yeah, friendships are huge, and having those kind of friends you can do that kind of stuff with, I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, the last question: what might people be surprised to find on your playlist?
Oh, I have such a huge variety of things that I love. I you might even remember, because I used to say this in class all the time. There's just two kinds of music, good and bad.
Yep.
And so I like good, whatever it is. So maybe let me just think what that would be. My musician kid has introduced me to some really good harder edged
Mhm.
stuff, or to me it's a little harder edged, but I can't think of the names of any of them right now. Rage Against the Machine,
Oh
I
yeah.
really I think they're really good.
I would have never expected that to come out of your mouth. Rage Against the Machine. I love
Right.
it. Fantastic. Oh, awesome. Very cool. So that's my quick. Let me put because I just learned I could do these. That was our quick first date question segment. So thank you everyone for participating. So I mean, you started on piano, but I mean, I would say you're probably known for your voice. I mean, your singing and what you've done and your list of accolades. I'm going to go through them just because I just think it's amazing. So, in terms of some of the things that you've gotten, the John Phillips, and I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, Sousa Award. Did I say that right?
Yep.
The Twin Cities Readers Best Female Vocalist. For the Minnesota Music Awards, you've won Best Female Vocalist multiple times, Artist of the Year, Best Country Band multiple times, Song of the Year. And then for the Emmy Award Music, you've got Parents' Choice Awards, 2007 inductee into the Mid-Atlantic Music Hall of Fame, the 2013 inductee into the Minnesota Music Hall of Fame. I mean, holy cow. I feel like I'm in the presence of royalty.
Well, and I just got inducted into my high school Hall of Fame, and Governor Walsh is in that as well, so I'm in good company there.
That's insane. Like I knew that there was some awards in Talented, but when I started doing some research and discovered these things, I was like, that was my teacher. So
And can I just say, you were probably among the very best students that I had, and I had hundreds. So,
oh, thank you. No, you were one of the few that made music theory make sense, because that was always a struggle of mine. And you, I don't know how you did it, but it finally clicked with me. And I was like, oh, I get it. And so I have to thank you for that, because that still, I mean, comes in handy to this day. Obviously, still working with music is knowing my harmonies and all that other stuff tied together. So
that's great to hear.
so voice is your main instrument. When did you, I would say, first discover that you had a voice, like in terms of singing? Like when did you recognize that, like, oh, I there's something here that I could do something with?
Well, it was when I was a senior in high school. So I I would just play guitar and sing, for my friends at sleepovers, and they remember us going like in the middle of the street in the middle of the night, and me and sitting in the street playing and singing songs. But I never took it seriously. But I was a senior in high school, and my main instrument was flute, and that's what I majored in college. And singing was just kind of a sideline thing, but I really wanted to be in the senior musical, which was Brigadoon. And I just wanted a chorus part. I thought I'm just going to try out and see if I can get a chorus part. And I got called back for the lead. And nobody was more shocked than me. And I told my mom, I got called back for Fiona for the lead. And she said, "What? You're not a singer." I'm like, I know, right? So
That's
I actually wound up being the understudy for Fiona because I was taller than the male lead. So they picked Nancy Meredith, who was a little shorter than me. But I remember the director saying, I told her I was kind of surprised, and she said, "Oh, you have a beautiful voice, and you really should do more with it. You should be singing, and so that
that's
was the first time that I actually thought of myself as, and I still really didn't, but I didn't believe her. So,
That's so two fascinating things. One, I didn't know you played the flute. I think that's awesome. I think that's a very underrated instrument, just in general. And then two, that's so crazy. Senior in high school, because usually, I mean, other musicians that I've talked to, they're like, "Yeah, I knew out the womb I was going to be a singer." I remember singing when I was 5 years old. So it was definitely, I mean, I don't want to say later in life, but it was later in childhood at least that you discovered that, oh, there's something here. That's interesting to me. Very cool. Okay, so so I'm just kind of going through my list of notes here. Um, what came after high school then in terms of like the career progression? So high school, you do the musical, you get the understudy part. People are telling you have a great voice. You should start doing something with this. How did that start to segue into more of a career for you?
well, I went to college, and my dream was that I would, be a flute player in a professional symphony orchestra.
Mm.
And I was really good in my day. I was first chair in the All-State Band and in the All-State Orchestra. And so that was what my path was going to be. And I had a wonderful flute teacher, and I played all through college and did my junior and senior recital and all of that. And then meanwhile, on the side, I had 2 or 3 different jobs. I taught flute lessons. I worked in the college post office. I worked in a clothing store, and I sang, just me and my guitar, in the college coffee house, and a couple of little, clubs around Mankato. And in my music major, I had to take some other instruments, and so I decided to take guitar lessons. And the guitar teacher is Jim McGuire, and he was and still is just an amazing classical and jazz player, and taught at the U. He studied under someone who was a Segovia
Oh,
student, and he came out to hear me when I was doing my little coffee house gig, and he asked me if I wanted to be in his band. And he had a little trio, and his trio was jazz, and I'm like, "Well, I'm not a jazz singer." And he said, "Well, I want to do what you like," because at that time I was really into Joni Mitchell and Linda Ronstadt and Bonnie Raitt, and he said, let's just do that, and let's do some of your originals. And so all of these guys were, really like famous musicians in Mankato. And it was unbelievable to me, that they wanted me to be in their band. So, so I did that, and had a ball doing that. And so that's kind of how it started. And there was a little flip from oh, I think I might want to be a singer now instead of a
Mhm.
flute player when I was in my next band, which is a band called City Mouse. And they have been around. They're still around. It's a great bunch of guys, and there's great players, and they have records out. And I just did their 50-year reunion and
Oh,
went
wow.
back and sang with them. And so we did some road work, and I started singing with them in clubs in Minneapolis. And that was kind of like, oh, I think that this is maybe what I want to do. So the flute kind of went by the wayside at
Now, do
that point.
you still play the flute? Do you still bust it out on occasion?
I do. I have a show that I played in, a couple shows that I play like one or two songs.
Oh,
It's
that's awesome.
it's really fun.
So we go from is it flautist? Is that the pronounce? Is that the
My flute teacher always used to say, you're in the United States, you're a flutist.
a flutist? Okay,
So
that's cool. But both, I mean, I in a weird way, I can kind of see the segue in the because I mean, it's all breath control is huge in both. I would assume.
yes. Well, and my flute teacher, and her name was Ruth Giles, and she was like a second mom to me growing up. I started taking lessons from her when I was young in junior high, like maybe eighth or ninth grade.
Mhm.
And she, I always felt like I wish I could play faster. I wish I could play, I couldn't play as fast as some of the other flute players. And she said, no, the whole idea is musicality and musicianship and dynamics and passion. And that's what you have that others don't have. And that really carried over to me, in singing, because I'm not a big, riffer, and I'm not a big, high power notes. At the end of the day, I hope that I can move somebody, and help somebody, maybe heal somebody in some way. So
That to me is what strikes me the most about music. I think you hit the nail on the head. Like the real game changers in terms of musicians and music are the ones that hit you in the heart. It's
yeah,
it's that feeling and that vibe to where you get an emotional reaction. It's not about how many vocal runs or how many guitar notes you could play or how quick your kick drum is. It's like, can you create that emotional connection? And I think you hit it dead on. Like that's what makes the best musicians out there the best. I mean, they may not be technically the best, but man, they just know how to hit you right in the heart and just
yeah.
make you feel. And
I feel like as an audience member, you want to be moved
yes,
in some way, so. And
yeah,
some people are moved by fast notes, and
oh yeah,
I'm not you know saying anything bad about that at
no,
all. It's
no.
amazing. It's just not what I do. So
Yeah. I think you and me are kind of on the same board to where like we appreciate that kind of emotional connection factor. Whereas my guitar player, he's like Captain Shreddy Shred, and the ones that blow him away are like the guys that play 90 million miles an hour, which always makes me want to give up guitar every time I watch it because
I
it's just
know.
like, nope, never gonna do that. So okay, so then that's what sparked the band, I mean, or that got you into more so wanting to be a vocalist. Now, one thing I wanted to pick your brain about, which I always thought was kind of cool, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you did a good amount of commercial music work. Like, did you not, or have you?
I
Yeah.
did. I did.
So how did that come about? I'm curious.
I actually got to do an audition. That was my first jingle. Was I had to audition for it,
Hmm.
and it was up here, and it was for a guy named Dale Menton, who's just a legendary musician and jingle producer, and I wound up working a lot with him. But it was for the Minneapolis Transit. It was for the bus,
Oh.
basically, and they wanted it to be sort of like Ricky Lee Jones' Danny's All Star Joint,
Hmm.
which I did in my band, and so I knew the whole vibe of what they were looking for, and so I got it, and they played that thing like 50 times a day. And so then I got lots of calls after that. That was my first jingle.
Now, do you remember hearing yourself back in the commercial? Like, is there a memory of you going like, "Oh my gosh, that's me"?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really really weird when you hear yourself on the radio for the first time. And the very first time was when I was still in Mankato, and I was just horrified. I'm like, I thought I was better than that, you know. I just, you know, there were things about my voice that I really didn't like at all, and it was good because it allowed me to work on those things. I had this real nasal thing that I just thought was just, it was horrifying to me to hear that. And I was like, ah. So I worked really hard to get rid of that, and you know, and I did. So
Well, I mean, it's kind of a blessing in disguise then in that regard.
yep,
Yeah,
yep, it
totally.
was.
So just because I'm curious, the nerd in me is curious. What was some of the weirder commercials you sang? Like, was there any ones that stick out to you? Like, wow, I am singing on.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Get Out and About with Depend. Probably the weirdest one. I mean, definitely the weirdest one.
Yeah, I'd say so. And I think I remember Scooter, or maybe it was
Scooter was on it.
yeah, Scooter was on it. But here, I remember him playing one salad shooter jingle. Was that you?
Yep.
That one stuck in my head. I was like, no way, that's Mary Jane. So I remember that one for sure. The salad shooter.
Salad shooter. And we did a bunch of you know, like General Mills is based here. So we did crispy wheats and raisins and Nature Valley granola bars and a bunch of stuff like that. And then I went to Chicago with my demo tape to, you know, to see, and it's like trying to get a record deal, trying to get a, you know, jingle work in Chicago.
Yeah.
But I did. I got a McDonald's spot and you know, some other things, and so that was really fun. And I loved, you know, I just love being in the studio. And there are some, you know, there were just some amazing producers and amazing writers, and I got to sing with the best, you know. And I didn't know actually how good, none of us knew how good we had it. We would be doing 3 and 4 jingles a week, and you know, it just seemed like, well, this is what life is, you know. Well, it isn't really, and it goes away. So
Well, it almost seems like the art of the jingle is gone. Like,
yeah,
I mean, which kind of bums me out because I enjoy associating a jingle to something.
yeah.
I mean, from a marketing standpoint, I would think it would make sense. But it's sad that a lot of that vocal work is gone from commercials and
I
advertising.
know. Well, the first thing that happened was a lot of the companies, that national companies in Minneapolis, started going to Chicago and New York and LA to have their jingles done instead of here. And then the whole union thing changed, and people were doing buyouts instead of, you know, getting residuals. And if you were a singer, you either did the buyout or somebody else would. You couldn't really say, no, I don't do buyouts, because then you don't get the work. So
Yeah. So how many years did you do the commercial stuff on a fairly regular basis?
I'd say throughout most of the 80s
Okay.
and into the 90s, you know. And every once in a while, I still get called to do that. Now, you know, the studio work I get called for is more like album work. And in the last week, I sang 3 duets on 3 different people's records, which was really fun. So
That's so cool. I mean, I have to imagine, I mean, that it's a rewarding feeling that someone recognizes your talent and wants you to be part of their musical baby with them, essentially.
yeah, it is, and it was so much fun. It was just, and they were all 3 really dear friends who I've been friends with for a long time and played music with for a long time. So it was really special.
That's very cool. So you brought up a point that I want to segue into, because you said you love the recording studio, like you love that whole recording aspect, but you're also a performer, obviously. So if you had to choose between studio work and performing live, putting you on the spot here, what would you pick?
You know, I would absolutely pick performing live. I love the connection with the audience, and I feel like, you know, even when we're doing covers, it's like I'm not trying to sound like whoever it is.
Mhm.
I'm just celebrating this great artist and this great song with all of you because you love it too, you know. And I did during COVID, I did like a, you know, Facebook Live thing. And it was fun and it was cool, but it was like, you know, it's not the same as
Oh,
playing in front of an audience. And I love talking to an audience. I love telling stories. I love, you know, people when they talk back to me from the audience most of the time is really fun.
so in terms of your live performances, I'm curious, as a vocalist, is there any pre-show rituals that you do for like warming up or taking care of your voice, or even weird superstitions that you may have before you hit the stage?
I definitely drink a lot of water
Hmm.
on the day of, and especially during sound check. And um, I have these throat drops that are really special that I will always have in my mouth, you know, before I go on stage and on the break.
Hmm.
And I do essential oils, and I do one called Breathe, which is a combination of eucalyptus and peppermint and tea tree, and it really opens up your airways. So I always, you know, just breathe that in from my hands and put a little bit on my chest so I can breathe it in. And all of those things really help. So
I would be very curious to try the Breathe. I mean,
it's amazing.
I'm drumming right now, but my singer, he's always looking for something just to help, and because he chews, doesn't chew, he does similar to you, where he's got these crazy mentholy like throat lozenges. But I'm wondering if the essential oils might be something he'd be willing to try. I'm going to pick your brain about that one later.
Hey, you got it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm your girl.
Hey, there
I'm
we
the
go.
crazy oil lady. So.
So then your performances that you do, obviously you've played with some amazing musicians over the years. Are there any that stand out where you're like, holy cow, I can't believe I just got to perform with that person, or something like that? Like, just let's play the name drop game, just because I'm super curious. Who have been
Well, my
standouts for you?
favorite, we opened for a lot of people, and my very favorite by a long shot were the Judds.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And you know, some of those guys, they, you know, they don't even get off their bus to
Yeah.
listen to the opening act. But the Judds, you know, stood on the side of the stage while we were doing our sound check, gave us all hugs, said,
Aw.
hey, why don't you guys come and have downstairs and have dinner with us? And they stood on the side of the stage while we, you know, did our set and gave us the best shout out. And, you know, I not too, maybe a year after that, I ran into Winona Judd at some big festival we were doing, and she remembered me. And you
Aw.
know, it was just, they could not have been nicer, you know. And I have the opposite story too. So
What, are you willing to share the opposite story?
well, I wouldn't name the name. It was a female singer who was really big at the time, and she was playing a concert at the Ordway, and she had a pretty big star that was her opening act and couldn't make it because we had a big snowstorm.
Typical
And
Minnesota. Yeah.
so we drove through a snowstorm to be the opening act, and she had a total hissy fit because in her contract it said no female singers could open for her.
Oh.
And she was apparently screaming bloody murder in her dressing room. And so, you know, and we felt like, hey, you know, dude, we just drove through a snowstorm to be
Yeah.
so you'd have an opening act.
You think we have something to warm up with? We just basically risked our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get those. I mean, I've come across. Obviously, I haven't. You know, my band now is just finally starting to do some more bigger tours and things like that. And we've definitely come across both sides of the spectrum, and it's interesting because some of them are just the most humblest, kindest, most generous people, and then some are just I don't want to say assholes, but assholes for lack of a better term for. And it just it doesn't make sense. It's like, man, you started where we were too. You got to remember. Yeah.
No.
So
Don't forget your raisin.
Exactly. So now those about people. What about places you've performed? Any places that are just like that you've loved, or you just felt like home for you, or ones that you just never thought you'd be able to play and you did?
Well, back in the 80s, I was in an all-woman group called Women Who Cook. And it was some of the just best, singers around town and players and all women. And we toured the Soviet Union.
Whoa.
And that was really amazing, amazing experience. And that was actually the second time that I toured the Soviet Union. And I also toured the Soviet Union when I was in college in a musical group. And so that was probably the most interesting, place I've ever played.
Whoa. So music
So,
brought you to the Soviet. That's awesome. Wow. I have to ask, how was the food?
not good. Not good at all. I lived on bread and borscht pretty much the whole
Fair
time.
enough. Yeah, you're not the first person that's told me that about the food over there. Is it's like yeah,
Yeah.
it's food.
But
So,
the people were some of the nicest,
mhm.
kindest, and after every concert, we walked away with literally arms full of flowers.
Aw.
And I mean, it was just really something.
So was that group? Was it originals, or was it covers, or a hybrid, or
It
I'm
was it was all covers.
okay. Oh, so cool.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about, and I love the way you put it earlier, and it just kind of really resonated with me, where it's like you're not trying to be the person, you're celebrating the person.
Exactly.
And I've never thought about it that way. So you've kind of changed. I mean, I've always loved playing covers and things, but that just resonated with me very much so just now, or a little bit ago when you said it. It's like, yeah, I'm just trying to pay my respects and enjoy what this person did for me, and hopefully I could share it with others.
That's exactly right. And uh, being able to sing, a Joni Mitchell song or a Linda Ronstadt song, they're the reason I sing,
Yeah.
because I wanted to be a part of those songs that moved me so much. And I know that if I feel that way, a lot of other people
Oh
feel
yeah.
that way, so.
No, I went to, because the Beatles was really my introduction into music. So that was what my mom got. I mean,
A
she
pretty good introduction.
no kidding, right? But a good friend of mine, over the summer, she was working a tour with, and then shame on me, I forget what it was, but it was a Beatles um, showcase, basically, where they would walk through the different eras of the Beatles, and they would have the costume changes and the whole 9 yards and the instrument changes. And it was just such a fun, cool. It just brought me back to childhood, and
Yeah.
and it was just such a rewarding, fun. I mean, I knew it wasn't the Beatles, obviously, but they weren't necessarily trying to be. I mean, they were trying to be them, but you know, no thing. But it was just such a cool, fun experience, and I would not mind doing that, at some point in my career, just because
Uh-huh.
I know how I felt, and I could tell how other people were feeling, and they were having a ball. Because luckily I got to talk to a couple of them after the show, because my friend kind of hooked me up, and it was such a cool thing, and it helps make music, I think, remain timeless, because
Yeah.
you're introducing it to new people. Because at that show there was 5-year-olds and people who were not five, and it was just very cool to see music passed on to these different generations and enjoyed by the generations that were a part of it. And I just thought it was such a cool thing. So sorry, I didn't mean to go on a tangent, but
No, I agree with every word of that.
it's awesome. So we talked about the live. Now let's talk about the studio work more so. So as a writer, I'm curious. I always like picking writers' brains, because I just like this. I always try to learn something new and see it from a different point of view. Do you usually have like a lyric idea first, or a melody idea, or a musical idea? Like, what in your world, or your writing world, how does a song kind of come together in that regard?
Well, I've kind of done it a bunch of different ways, but I'd say the most common is that I have like a hook. I have a title, you know, and I've been walking around with like with a great title for years, and I can't do anything with it. Someday I will, but I like at least coming up with, you know, a working title, and this song is going to be about this. And so when I taught songwriting, before they would write their song, they had to give me the title, and they had to tell me what the song was going to be about. And
Interesting. Okay.
they had to do that first, because I did some really cool songwriting seminars in Nashville, and some of the best songwriters were the teachers, and they said, the hook or the title is like the center diamond in a ring, and everything should be made to hold that jewel up and to make that jewel sparkle and shine, and so I think songwriters, especially young songwriters, try to say too much in one song. Songwriters who are just learning how to write, it's hard for them to say what the song is about.
Oh yeah, and I'm guilty of that too, like for sure. But that's an interesting point. I'm gonna try that and be like, because usually for me the title's the last thing to come, and when right, so I'm gonna 1,000% try that and be like, bam, here's the title of the song. Bam, here's what's
about. I have to say that I am not saying that's the best way to do it at all. Because some of my favorite songwriters will sit down and play chords on the piano and sing a melody, and that's how they start, and they wind up being amazing songs, so.
No, but I think it'd be a cool challenge just to get outside my comfort zone and maybe learn something new about the writing process. See, that's why I love talking to other musicians. I get all these. It's a very even though obviously I'm doing this podcast for people to see, but it's kind of selfish for me as well because I get to learn and talk to cool people. So it's
that way of doing it, really keeps you focused.
Yeah.
So
I'll have to give that a shot. That's awesome. So now, in this, so you craft your song. Do you have like go-to musicians that you like? Like, let's say you are performing a set of covers or originals, whatever it is. Do you have like your go-to set of musicians that are your backbone that you like to work with?
Yes.
Consistently?
Yep. And most of them I've been working with for most of my life.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So.
I'm gonna put them on the spot. Shout them out. I'm curious to know who they are.
Well, I pretty much with everything that I do, I have Boyd Lee on acoustic guitar. He's an amazing acoustic guitar player. He's a fantastic singer. The one thing we haven't done together is write together, and he's a really great writer too. So I still want to do that at some point. But he's a really special musician. So, I always have him. I usually have Dick Shopto on bass, who I, worked with since I was in my 20s. A couple of different drummers that I really like. Noah Levy is someone that I just started working with that I really like. Ben Kaplan is another guy that I work with a lot who's just terrific. Brian Peters is my guitar player and plays pedal steel. And I've been working with Brian for decades, and I just love his playing, and he's a great steel player as well. A new guy that I've been working with a lot is a guy named Richard Crean, who is a mandolin, fiddle, acoustic guitar, and singing. And he's really amazing. Peter Johnson is another guy on drums that I just love his playing. And of course, all my best friends are all female singers, and they're all fantastic. Amy Lee, Pamela McNeil, and Patty Peterson, and so I'm Gwen Matthews. I'm pretty lucky to have all these beautiful women as my best friends who are also uber talented.
The talent pool just in general in Minnesota, and especially the Twin Cities, is just, that was one of the things I really discovered when I first moved out here, was how deep the talent pool is in this area. It's
incredible.
Oh yeah.
It's incredible. And it always just blows my mind when I, I just worked with a guy named Brian Zimniak, who's a keyboard player
Hmm?
who I never worked with. He's just fantastic. And I'm like, how do I, you know, how do I live this long in this town and I have never worked with you before? And it's like that a lot, you know.
Yeah.
So,
It's like a big little thing, like to where it's I mean, Minnesota's not that well, Minnesota's a big that obviously, but Minneapolis compared to other cities like New York or San Francisco or LA is small.
yeah,
And I'd argue that we could take some of those bigger cities to town in terms of musicians and talent. And that was just a real big and I think that's one of the big reasons I stayed here, was just the talent pool. And not only that, just the kindness of the majority of these people, and just openness. And I mean, my best friends, who I jokingly call my family out here, similar to you, I met them through music.
yeah.
And it's just a lifelong connection. I mean, they're my brothers and they're my sisters, and
I always say they're my brothers and sisters who I chose.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I chose. I love that. Yeah, it's such a cool thing. I had another question. Sorry, I'm going to go back to my notes here. I just totally lost. Oh, yes. So, if you could pick a dream concert, twofold. One to open for, or no, sorry, let me rephrase this. If you could sing with anyone, dead or alive, like a duet, who would it be?
James Taylor.
My mom would love you.
I didn't even hesitate.
Yeah, that was quick.
I would, I wouldn't go out on tour as a backup singer at this, point.
Yeah.
Unless it was James Taylor. I've always wanted, because I love his writing. I love him.
Oh, yeah.
He's so authentically, everything he does is just so him. And I love, he's got great background vocals on everything. And so, yeah.
Well, I remember it might.
Or Sarah Bareilles too. I love her too.
Yeah. I think, gosh, I want to say it was a couple years ago at the Kennedy Center Awards. James Taylor did a tribute to someone. I can't remember who, and but I just remember just being very taken aback by his performance in a good way.
Yeah,
it was just such a very, like we talked about, it hit me in the chest in such a good way. And both me and my mom, after we were done watching that, because I love my mom to death, because my parents are from California, and she knows I love watching the Kennedy Honors Awards, so she records them for me. When I come home, we watch them together.
Oh,
and after
I love those too.
Oh yeah. And so after both watching that, both me and my mom were like, that was awesome. Like we both looked at each other and were like, yeah. So that would be the person who you'd love to sing with, to do a duet with. But as a fan, give me a concert lineup that you would be your dream concert lineup.
To go to see.
As a fan, yeah.
I'm really, it probably would change next week, but right now, I'm so loving. I've been listening to Sarah Bareilles live at the Hollywood Bowl, and she is like, to me, she is a masterclass.
Oh yeah.
In for a vocalist, and I would definitely have her. I really like, I'm talking about the younger, newer, I like Maren Morris a lot. I think she's just fantastic. Love her writing.
I'm going to write that one down. I'm not aware.
Maren. And her new record is just terrific. And she's just a really good writer and a good singer.
Cool.
And they'd probably never be on a bill together, but because they're really different. I love Brandi Carlile.
Oh yeah.
So she'd be on there. And probably the headliner would be Bonnie Raitt.
Oh, that would, yes.
Wouldn't that be a great concert?
Yes. No, it's funny because not sometimes, and I bring it on myself. I know this. I get labeled as like a rocker and a metalhead because that's my genre. But I gotta thank my mom for this. She introduced me to so much cool music that I was brought up with through her, and my dad not so much. My dad, well, he loves Barbra Streisand, so I got to give him that one. But his idea of like good music that he enjoys, he's not a big music listener, but like he always got excited about Christmas time because then he could play the Alvin and the Chipmunks Christmas album. Like
Oh, funny.
that was him. So
Yeah.
needless to say, my musical taste did not really come from my dad. They came from my mom. Actually, just a cool side story. One of the biggest my first big concert that I went to, and I'll always remember this. My mom actually pulled me out of school early to drive me to San Francisco to take me to see the Rolling Stones.
Nice.
And I've seen the Stones, I think 3 times since then. And Mick Jagger, I think, is just a freak of nature in terms of just his stamina and his and the guy must run 8 miles on stage. I mean, it's incredible. It's so cool. And just Keith, it's insane. I loved it. So that would be an awesome dream lineup.
That would be a fabulous concert.
Yeah. I'm trying to think here. I'm just looking over my notes one more time.
Don't you want to know what the first concert was I went to?
Oh, yes. Of course, shame on me. Yes, I actually had that written down, and that was in my list of first questions, and I totally skipped it. So yes, what was your first concert?
So my first concert was, I went to 2 kind of in a row. Mm-hmm. The first one was Seals and Crofts.
Ooh.
And the second one was Jethro Tull. It's like completely opposite ends of the spectrum. I was in high school for,
That's so cool. It's I think first concert experiences are just so impactful, because it introduces you to a whole new world and a whole new you listen to these people obviously and you see pictures and that, but to experience someone you love live, I'm
such a fan. And I love every concert I go to. That's, local or national. I get really pissed off when I read some negative review, because I love every concert I go to. It's
like a drug almost to a certain extent, where you get filled with just, and the best part is you're around people who love the same thing. So there's that connection. And it's such a beautiful music. It's a magical thing. It really is. I don't know how else to summarize it. It's just magic.
It is.
So, and I lost my last question. Where did it go? Shoot. Talked about that. Oh, maybe I did cover it. No, I did. Never mind. I talked about the commercial work. My brain just totally checked out. Sorry.
It's okay.
So I always like to leave the last little bit of the podcast for you to plug anything you want to plug. So this is going to be airing probably next Tuesday or Thursday. So if you're watching this now, it's Tuesday or Thursday. Is there anything that you would like to tell the world about what you're doing, what you have coming up? Please use this time to promote anything you want to promote or talk about anything you want to talk about.
Well, I'm always, doing, I'm kind of back to doing almost pre-COVID schedule stuff, which is great. My website is maryjanealm.com, and I need to update my schedule. I'm really lame about keeping it updated. I need to do that so people can go there to find out where I am. I love this group that I am a part of. Is called Two Girls and a Boyd.
Yeah.
With Richard. And it's so the 2 girls are me and Amy Lee and Boyd Lee, obviously, and then Richard Crean on mandolin. And we play a couple times a month in smaller venues like the 318 and the Dunsmore Room at Crooners. And I love doing that. I'm in some tribute shows that I'm really loving. There's one called Laurel Canyon. The music, or it's called California Dream, and the music of Laurel Canyon. And it's all the people that I grew up loving, from the Monkees to Crosby, Stills and Nash and the Eagles and Jackson Browne and Linda Ronstadt and Joni Mitchell and all of these people, the Doors, Neil Young. All these people lived in this one little neighborhood and wrote songs together, formed bands, and and the Mamas and Papas. And that's a really fun show. We've got that's coming up at the Chanhassen Dinner Theater, and I don't know the date. but they can look at Chanhassen.
It'll be yeah.
I also have I do my one show that is my show is a tribute to Emmylou Harris, and she's one of my heroes, and that is at Crooner's on the 4th of November.
Oh, cool.
So
that's awesome.
And then I'm kind of tossing around in my head because next summer will mark 50 years of me playing in public, and I'm thinking about doing something.
Oh, you should
commemorate that, and I don't know what that is.
You 1,000 million bajillion % absolutely should.
I'm like, would people come? You know, and what would I do? And so.
Oh no, I love that idea. Yeah. I mean, your career here has just been phenomenal, and you're just such a kind person, and I know people would come to that, and it's something huge to celebrate. I mean, a 50-year career in music. I mean,
it's pretty cool.
It's very cool. I mean, man, if I can get a 20-year career in music, I'd be stoked. So years, that's amazing. So everyone, I'm going to put links to Mary Jane's stuff in the description. Again, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. It was wonderful catching up, and I learned so much more about you and your career that I didn't know before. That just makes me love you and respect you even more. So thank you so much for being a part of this. Everyone, check out her stuff. I'll put the links in the description below. But stay tuned for another podcast coming up soon. So to all my friends out there, take it easy. If it's easy, take it twice. Keep it nice. And I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.